All right, guys, happy Monday. Before we crack into Gatsby Chapter 4, let's take a look back together at the Chapter 3 review question, just to be sure we have some of the main concepts, themes, etc., fresh in our minds before we start a new week with Gatsby. So today, Chapter 1, Nick tells the reader, and he repeats this several times, I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. One paragraph later, he reminds us, I had actually been invited. Now, why is this so important to Nick? Now, this is part of his Midwestern values. The beginning of the book, he tells us he's one of the few honest people he's ever known. He's the author's trying to establish him as a reliable narrator. But further, and we don't even know this yet, Gatsby himself invited him for a reason. We don't know why yet. This is all a little bit of foreshadowing that we're going to dig into later on today. So Gatsby throws these tremendous, extravagant parties that he doesn't really seem to enjoy himself. He actually invited Nick. He wants to take him out into the hydroplane, tomorrow old sport. We're going to find out why. But basically, Nick is set apart. He's not one of these people. He's more or less an observer. Did I skip question 1? Oh, yes, I did. Question 1 I talked about while I was doing the read aloud. The author shifts to the present tense. So by 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun. It's really subtle, but the normal form of storytelling is to keep all the verbs in the past tense. We're just kind of used to it as readers. The story's already occurred, these things have happened, and here's your tale. By shifting into the present tense, the author is trying to imply that Gatsby's parties were always occurring. So it was like a perpetual party, a perpetual moment that lasted throughout the entire summer. I just thought that was an interesting shift. Wanted to point it out to you guys. So to further confuse you on a Monday, let's skip down to question 3. I talked about this in doing the read aloud too. This minor character who is referred to as Owl Eyes, this drunken old bespectacled man, is in Gatsby's ornate library, tearing apart all the books, looking at them, and is shocked to find out that this entire library is actually legit. They're all leather-bound books, fancy books, etc. The point being that he's implying that Gatsby was a fraud, kind of like he says these guys are regular Belasco. Belasco was a movie producer. In other words, he's saying that Gatsby's not just a fake, he's gone through a great deal of trouble to create a persona. There's a lot of rumors, a lot of innuendo in this chapter about exactly who Gatsby is. And nobody really seems to know, but the stories that draw the most interest involve something sinister. He's a nephew of Kaiser Wilhelm from Germany. He was a spy during the war. So it's always something vaguely sinister about Gatsby that catches people's imagination. So we don't really know who he is. Lastly, in question number 4, so why do you think this guest is so surprised by the authenticity of Gatsby's books? It's like he's implying that Gatsby's a fake in some way, which at this point seems unwarranted. More foreshadowing. Question 4, Nick, our narrator, interacts with Gatsby before knowing who he truly is. Well, does anybody know who Gatsby really is? Apparently all the guests are there. They haven't been invited except for Nick. They just kind of show up. Nobody really seems to know much about Gatsby. We hear that he says he was an Oxford man, but our golfer, gosh, I forgot her name now, major character, Nick's little friend he's chaperoning around the party, says, I don't believe him, though. He was in the war. Who knows who he was? So that Nick interacts with Gatsby before knowing who he truly is allows us as readers, I think, to project our own imaginations onto this. I mean, like, who is this guy? Nick doesn't even recognize him. Perhaps none of us really do. Ooh, let's see what else we got here. Oh, question 5. Again, and I pointed this out too, we see Gatsby standing alone, kind of looking out over the scene. Again, he's kind of apart from the scene. I ask, does Gatsby appear to be having fun at his own party? Well, all of the guests are fantastically drunk, dancing, and yet he's kind of set alone, supervising the scene. So he's there, but he's definitely set apart. I'm going to conclude, not really, at least not at this point. He just seems to be supervising things strangely, oddly, but he doesn't really seem to be having fun himself. This is going to relate to the main action of the story. We don't know why yet. Jordan Baker is the golfer. Jordan Baker. Jordan Baker, the quality that she finds attractive in Nick is his honesty. She finds him safe. Paradoxically, she's a fundamentally dishonest person, so she fears that if she has nothing to worry about with Nick, he's not someone like her. And so, therefore, she believes that she can trust him. Again, the narrator reminding us that he's a reliable narrator. He's a good observer of what's going on here in the story. And do I have more in this chapter? That's more than enough. So, key talking points here to yourself, as you're getting ready to read chapter 4 with me here. Why is Gatsby going through all of this trouble? What was the reason he needed to talk to Jordan Baker in private? What was this amazing story that she hints that she wanted to tell? She promised she couldn't tell, but she really wanted to tell Nick all about? And so why was Nick invited to the party when no one else was? Let's hold on to these things as we move forward and crack into chapter 4 next. Remember, if you like this content, don't be afraid to hit the like and subscribe buttons. All right, Blackhawk. I'll stop doing that eventually, I'm sure.